So welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. And today is Monday, November 29th, 2021. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And while we're waiting on Michael to dial in, I'll just direct you to our website, which is whyagain.org, and click on the Start Here button in the upper left corner, and that will take you to where you can listen to MP3s of special radio shows. You can download all of our worksheets. You can find the book, lots and lots of information. I'll just let you know that the revised app has been submitted to Google, so it'll just be a day or two, and once they approve the changes, then you can do the update on your phones, and you'll be surprised at all the changes. I'm working with India this morning trying to get the Apple changes made, and then they'll submit that. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have both of them rock and rolling. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart. That's exciting, and thank you for all the work you've done on it. I know that you're 5 o'clock morning this morning again, so you could be on with tech support out of India. It was one of those early mornings, but I'm excited about what the app's going to be offering and its latest iteration, and it's pretty cool. You know, that we have this technology that we can do this communication, and people anywhere in the world can listen, tap in, ask questions, do the worksheet online. I mean, they're on their own phones privately. It's all just really quite awesome. And,
and the new one is going to have the ability, no matter what page, no matter if you're on the commitments page or the events page or the home page or the 7-step, it doesn't matter what page you're on. If something pops up and you think of a question, there's a button at the bottom that says Ask a Question, and you can click it and choose what email you want to send it. It'll require your name and your email address so that we can respond to you. And it actually says in the app, all questions will be addressed anonymously on our live radio show, and then we will respond to you via email, giving you the date and time of the show where we answer your question. And so that's going to be available on any page that you're on in the app. So we're excited about that, too. So as you're going through doing a worksheet and you get halfway through it and you have a question, you can ask it right there and then hit your back button and go right back to doing the worksheet. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think oftentimes the subtlest questions are some of the ones that make the biggest difference. And when people are in the middle of an emotional situation they're working through and such, that kind of slips away, where here, bingo, you can just be put in. And when you give us your name and email address, it will only be used for that purpose unless you check the box and you want to be put on our mailing list, and it will add you to our mailing list as well. So very cool that we can get to that next level of interaction. I just had the thought, what about foreign countries that are using it that write questions in foreign languages? I guess we use Google Translator, right? We get that?
Yeah, that's something that'll be on my computer anyway, so as I open the email, I can tell it to translate.
Cool. So the next level of possibility, making these tools available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. That's what we're here to do. And both Jeanie and I each had a big breathing session this weekend. It was quite powerful and quite profound for both of us. And I've heard of the pineal gland giving out a fluid that energetically elevates the structure, but have never experienced it before. And this breathing session on Saturday was just beyond monumental in terms of experiencing that. Energetic shift. Some of you are familiar with the energy field work that we do in the intensives, and that set of tools was designed over the last 30 or so years to bring hands-on support to getting to that still point and opening to the next level of energy movement, and profoundly enhances the breath work. And just all the years I've worked with it, I've never reached this level, this shift in energy. And literally, one of the core places with the energy field work, if you remember that from the intensive, is the whole bony structure of the head, the spine and the pelvis. And literally, it was just awesome to feel those energetic shifts happening and changes in the structure. And with it came an understanding of how, or reinforced the understanding that, the shape of an antenna determines the frequencies it receives. And to realize that the bony structure of the head, the spine, and the pelvis are an antenna. They're literally the receivers for the energies that run our whole cellular system. And it came to the point, at one point as I'm breathing, where I could literally feel each bone in my head as it shifted, as it moved, and as it responded to energetic, what can I say? It's almost wordless, but energetic impetus to move that structure and realize what I've shown as that was happening was realizing that those movements, those energetic stimulus, as it were, are designed to incline us. In Aramaic, talk about the living in the eternal forces from the Creator, and that's it. It's just, when we talk about it, it's one thing. When you experience it, it takes things to a whole other level. So, in any event, I have the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, and what you can do about it, in front of me. So let's do our customary couple of paragraphs as we work up toward the end of the year. We are on page 152, the bottom of 152, if you're following along with us. And we're in the chapter on the Aramaic solution. And we've been talking to Richard about this whole idea of forgiveness, and that when we step into total responsibility, then anything based in fear or hostility is allowed to surface and be released. As I was working with Jeanie, and she breathed yesterday. She breathed me the day before, and then I breathed her yesterday. And was working on just holding, if you remember, the energy points just at the top of the spine, and feeling how she went into this tension, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, fear is processing, just like, and the energy moving was just monumental, just dumping all this old energy. So pretty sweet when you get the combination right. It's like, if you imagine all the tumblers inside of a lock falling into alignment for that keyway to open, and that's what a combination of each and every one of the tools does so powerfully. And so we're back to the idea of what is projection. And so I offer Richard the thought, remember, we spoke of projection, externalization, and blaming another for the output of your mind. Doesn't it seem a little ridiculous for me to blame you for a reality generated by my mind? It does sound strange when you say it that way, Richard says. He agreed, kind of half-heartedly. He paced the floor. I'm still not convinced. It certainly doesn't feel like I'm projecting when I'm upset with someone. Well, that's because of the way our minds work, Richard. We have the amazing capacity to make it appear that our internal realities are outside of us. Knowing this, the mind's distortions can be bypassed. As you realized earlier, all healing is an inside job. From the Aramaic point of view, your triggering me gives me the needed opportunity to see something inside myself. That's something which needs to be forgiven. And, if you just feel the slightest tensions in your body, know that you're holding on. You remember we've talked about Dr. Sarno, a back surgeon, and he invented or coined a term to describe this process, TMS, tension mitosis syndrome. And in particular, he was a back surgeon, and in the last years of his working with people with back injuries and pain, he didn't use a scalpel and was far more successful than when he did use a scalpel. And what he taught people in order to undo their back pain and pain in general was that their pain was caused by the mind holding energetic patterns that it didn't want to deal with. In other words, creating muscle tension with the mind. And that turned into physical disorders because the muscle tension created a pressure on blood vessels and nerves that inhibited their flow. And, he has, if you remember from some of our earlier discussions, the best description of back pain that I've ever seen. And that is that back pain is unconscious rage. And he would teach people to be responsible for their rage, to recognize the tension in their forms, and to really get to the point where they could let those tensions go. We have a meditation CD that I did, 40 years ago. And that, actually, the way, I'm just kind of reviewing the story in my mind as to how that came about. It's a meditation that I had done, and we had it on cassette back 40 years ago, and that was about the time that I was moving to South Florida, and there was a gentleman that I'd met from Naples, Florida, that had given, he was actually from Canada, but he was in Naples, Florida, on vacation, and I gave him a copy of this CD, and I don't even know, it was 8 or 9 years later, I'd forgotten that CD was ever made, or that cassette. It was a cassette tape at that time, and he contacted me, and he's kind of like in a crisis, urgent, like, Michael, I need a copy of that CD. And I was like, okay, so what was your name? Well, I have slept a few times the last 8 or 9 years, so no, I don't really remember our meeting. And no, I apologize. I don't know what CD you're talking, or what cassette you're talking about. He said, well, this is my healthcare plan. Every time I get sick, I get that CD out. I go through that progressive relaxation that you do, and I get up and I walk away and I feel great. And I've worn the cassette out. I need another one. It's like, whew. I had no idea what he was talking about at that point. But I went looking through the archives and did find, when they transferred over from CD to cassette, it was never mastered for CD, so it was something that just dropped out of our catalog back then. But we did get it mastered for CD, and it goes through really building awareness of the tensions in the body so that those tensions can be released. And when the tensions go, nerve impulses increase, blood flow increases, everything changes. One of the things Sarno says is that a 5% restriction of oxygen to a cell means that cell is screaming out in excruciating pain. And when you let the tensions, TMS, tension mitosis syndrome, when you let the tensions go, then all of a sudden blood flow opens. Blood delivers oxygen. And, the blood vessels, how delicate is a blood vessel that's about the 10th the width of a hair, because that's what the blood vessels are that deliver oxygen and nutrition, the blood cell, to the cell itself and remove the wastes, the acidic wastes from the cell. Where fluid is acidic, oxygen is driven out. Carbon dioxide is one of the, it's what we breathe out when we exhale. It's a waste product. The trees breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. It's a nice exchange that happens there. But if the red blood cell isn't getting into deliver the oxygen nutrition and pick up that carbon dioxide and the other acidic waste from the cell and remove it, it's just like somebody who's constipated. You've got a serious problem. If the cell is constipated because there's not enough blood flow, and the capillaries, of which we've each got about 60 billion, are the 10th the width of a hair, and or smaller, and of course it doesn't take much tension, muscle tension on those to restrict that flow. So that relaxation, it's called Wellness Through Stillness. If you are inclined to order it, it's on the website. And so when we really start to pay attention to what's going on in the structure, and I can remember back in the early days. In fact, you've heard Patrick McGann on the show. Dr. McGann is a naturopath that I've known for about 50 years. He was the first person I ran into that introduced me to massage therapy. And Patrick's a pretty big guy. And when he would work on my back, I came out of the business world. I worked 9 days a week, 18 hours a day. And he literally would almost cry because my muscles were so stiff and so tight. And I see, personally how layer by layer, level by level, as I do my own work, things open and open and open in the most amazing and profound ways. So we have the amazing capacity to make it appear that our internal realities are outside of us. From the Aramaic point of view, your triggering me gives me the opportunity to see something inside myself. If I'm willing to open to it, I can then forgive as to the reality you've brought up in me. But in no way do I need to forgive you. Let's look at the Aramaic form of forgiveness as it applies to the scene we discussed earlier when we talked about blockage of truth. So we're now going back to page 49 to 53 in the book, if you have the book there. In the illustration, by the way, you can download the book free from our website, many different languages. In the illustration I used in that discussion, pages 50 and 51, observe that most of the language in these diagrams we identified as being projection communication. In the next illustration, page 154, take note that the language that each person uses. It comes from our workshop entitled Communication. Did you hear what I think I said? And it's called responsibility communication. Observe that the words they use reflect that they each understand their responsibility for their individual realities. And so, recognizing once again, bringing to mind the awareness that forgiveness is about removal of energetic patterns that have been held in by the holding of the breath and the creation of tension. And when one chooses to breathe and do the work that keeps the body in stress and keeps circulation restricted, keeps immunity from functioning properly. When we reverse that, when we remove the energetic patterns that didn't belong, everything shifts, everything changes. And we get to live in, quite literally, a different world, different reality structures altogether. And so that's what we're here to support people understanding, taking advantage of, and putting to work in their lives. So we're delighted that you're here to be part of this conversation. And if you are on one of those stations where we can't see you, our calling number is 563-999-3581. If you dial that number, you'll be listening to the show. And if you push 1, we will be having a conversation. We'd love to hear from you. What's on your mind? How can we support you? Jeanie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room? And I'm thinking that perhaps, I think I'm hearing Jeanie's voice in the background, that perhaps she's talking to someone on her phone, so it's probably checked out of the show for a moment. So let me just check with her. Let me walk into the other room. My apology for the hesitation. I was just listening and hearing her voice. And she must have had, we've got a bunch of things going on, with Indy in particular. So just one second. Excuse us. Yeah, we've got several things going on. We've been having some car difficulties, and our vehicles are getting kind of aged, so we're actually in the middle of shopping for another car as well. So there's lots going on here. So 563-999-3581 is our calling number. If you have a thought or a question, if you push 1, once you call that number, you'll be listening to the show. And we'd love to hear your voice. We'd love to hear what's going on in your world. How can we support you? What's on your mind? In the meantime, and Jean said it should just be a few seconds, but it looks like it's turning into more than that. My apology. One of the things I'm planning to address later in the week is the Aramaic Beatitudes. It's something that actually in my Still Point session on Saturday came up on a whole new level of understanding. And if you want to take a look at those to just educate yourself a little bit or refresh it in your mind if you've worked with them before, you can go to our website, whyagain.org. And if you click in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a link that says Start Here. And you can go down to where it says Other Worksheets, click there, and you can download the Beatitudes poster. We do have a 10 by 13 two-color poster and on parchment that you can order, but you can just download it and print it off yourself and have that available for the discussion later in the week if you'd like to be part of that discussion. And, you know, where the Greeks tell us that the Beatitudes start out with kind of a nebulous phrase, the phrase that the Greeks tell us. If Yeshua were sitting and listening to the Greek translations, he'd say, that's all Greek to me. Before each of the Beatitudes, it does not say, blessed are they, but rather speaks about the fact that underlying our perceptual constructs, there's an energy that's designed to be active in us. And that energetic pattern in Aramaic was called a tuv, which quite literally translates as an attitude of mind. And according to Yeshua's Beatitudes, there is a way to activate that neural structure, and that's what the Beatitudes are. It's a set of instructions for bringing forward this built-in neural structure that's designed to move and incline us towards certain behaviors that ultimately, we would say that they'd be good choices that we'd make that would lead us to more delight and happiness in our lives. And if other energetic patterns, that would be energetic patterns based in hostility or fear, are what's active, then our choices aren't going to be so good. And the results we'll produce will tend to be more in line with pain and trauma. So we're looking to make that leap to cleaning out the garbage in the mind, the hostility of fear. Forgive us to that garbage and activate that underlying neural structure so that that's always what's prompting us into behavior. And of course, the forgiveness tool Jeanie was talking about in the app is how to remove the content, how to discharge the emotional trauma around any underlying state of mind to be the active state of mind. And so if you go to whyagain.org, click in the upper left-hand corner and scroll down to other worksheets, and you'll see the Beatitudes poster. Print a copy off and maybe have it in hand. It may stimulate some questions and some good discussion and get things moving to at another level. And so, Ms. Jeanie, are you back with us, sweetie?
I am. My apologies. My brother had called, and I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. I told him I'd call him back after the show. Cool. I'll also put a link to the Beatitudes from the website in the notes for today, too.
Awesome. Very cool. So do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
It is all quiet. We've got a few people on the switchboard, but nobody has a hand up. So if somebody presses 1, you're first in line. We've got 32 minutes, so we have plenty of time.
Time for dialogue. So if you're out there in listener land, push 1. Let's have a conversation. How can we support you? What's on your mind? Any question anywhere on the map with tools, the responsibility communication, the forgiveness tool, the codependence tool, the power person dynamic. Where are your questions? Where's your mind moving today? And what kind of things can we support you in? Go ahead, sweetie.
Yeah. I was just going to say one of the tools that I used, actually even in doing the breath work yesterday, one of the things that I saw was it was like a ball of energy and light, and it was like kind of like an egg, and I was like, oh, this is better than having a baby. Look what we've created. But then I was wanting to hold on to it, and so one of the tools I used was our emotional release technique, and just letting it go and letting the energy go back out into the universe, and felt so complete after doing that. So maybe talk about that tool.
Well, that's a good idea, but before we move to that, I just want to get a little clearer. So I know you shared with me this energy ball and like the light in your eyes and the joy, the delight in your voice was just awesome. But what I'm hearing on a new level of clarity was that maybe your mind wanted to hold on to it, but then was there guidance that it was something you needed to let go of? Was that what happened?
Yes. It was like
okay.
I wanted to hold on to it, and I like held it in my hands like a fragile egg, and could see myself handing it to you to hold, but it was like holding on to it for some reason and not letting it move from that position or from that state. And I was just guided that I needed to release the attachment to holding on to it and so I did that, which is, and it was like it just kind of from being in the egg shape. It's kind of like you were trying to describe something earlier. There's like hardly words to put this, but it was like egg shape, and I was holding it, and I did that release technique, and it was like the energy and the light just kind of floated up and out like stars or like dust, like angel dust or something, and just went back out into the universe. And I felt so complete after doing that and letting it go. And my hands were tingly and numb after letting it go. And so that's the strongest I have felt that sensation after doing a release technique. And I just felt real complete after doing that.
Sweet. As I tap into it, it feels like a probably another level of opening that veil of your temple and letting the energy that is there to be generated naturally just move. And that's awesome. Very cool. So the emotional release technique is actually very, very simple. And you can take anything you're attached to, or anything that triggers you into upset or disturbance, or the belief that something outside of you is the cause of what's moving in you. You know, oftentimes people are in relationships and there are emotional triggers that, you know, if you've ever seen the movie The War of the Roses, you know, one of them says something, the other one gets triggered. The second one triggers the first one back again, and all of a sudden it's a downward spiral to where these people finally in that particular film end up murdering each other. But a simple stopping for a moment when you find yourself triggered like that, and allowing yourself to just breathe and step into willingness is the start of utilizing this emotional release and or attachment to something being a certain way. And so if you've got anybody, you know, as you're listening to the show, if you've got anybody that you've got this emotional attachment to, let's just do the process as we are here live on the show. So I'm just going to ask you to get quiet and close your eyes, go inside. And let yourself just gently breathe. And imagine that I'm there physically with you, and I have two pencil-shaped lights. One of those pencil-shaped lights, I'm going to ask you to just imagine that I'm inserting it right through the top of your crown, right at the top of the center of your head. And the second one, I'm inserting through the forehead. And so what I want you to do at this point is just imagine yourself and your awareness being focused on the point where those two pencil tips of light would meet. And breathe. And so your focus is there, right where the two lights meet. One inserted down through the very top of the crown chakra, top of the head, and one inserted right through the center of the forehead. And that's the seat of the unconscious. That's a place we can go to be focused and do this energetic release. And imagine, allow your mind to serve up a picture of whoever it is that you're ready to release, or whatever it is. So if it's a relationship, okay, so I want to get a picture of Bill, the person I'm going to do this release with. And so just allow a picture of that person to come to mind. And then addressing Ruka. Remember, there's that eternal elemental force in us that undoes the effects of our errors, and this is part of the undoing process. And as you linger in this state, once you've done the release, the other part of the definition of Ruka Dekuchi in Aramaic is and teaches us the truth. So just be there and be receptive. But allow a picture of that person to come to mind, and then addressing Ruka, I release all attachment to, and then say that person's name. And it could even be yourself. I release all attachment to, naming that person. And just notice what happens with your mind's picture of them. Notice what happens physiologically. Many people will feel a tingling in their head and or in their hands, in the face. So just notice as you speak that release what's happening for you. And breathe. And just be receptive for any input. You know, when your intuition really first starts to work, it oftentimes feels like you're making it up. But just let yourself go ahead and make it up and be with what the result is. And what you'll notice over time is you'll have the sensation of what it's like when that input is right on track. You'll know it's accurate. And you might make some notes if anything significant occurred. And that's as simple as that particular tool is. And if you've got anything you'd like to share from doing that, certainly push one and let's have a conversation about it. We've got about 23 or 24 minutes left. Would love to have conversation. And if there are no questions, then maybe we'll just let go of the show for today. As I said, we have lots on our plate. Would be delighted to carry on the conversation if anybody's out there with a question or a thought or a request for support. No hands up, Miss Jeanie?
No, it is quiet.
Okay. Well, much appreciation to everyone who's joined us, and we hold the space for you to have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. You have the power to give it, and the world has the need for it. So blessings. Bye-bye.